So, we've had some real successes there. Where is our biggest issues? Well, it's different in different parts of the county, but we still have some real concerns around serious violence. We have some real concerns around domestic abuse, which accounts for about 40% of all violent crimes, which is quite phenomenal. So we're working hard in that regard. We've put some specialist teams in around domestic abuse. We've also, one of the first in the country actually, which I'm very proud of, we also have a violence and vulnerability unit in Essex, which is a partnership construct, so it's all partners, but very specifically looking around violence and vulnerability, and at all age, but particularly really focusing on how we help young people understand what healthy relationships are, where they might be at risk of being exploited, and to be fair, those that have got into criminality around violence and vulnerability or with county lines, which I'm sure you've all heard of, how we can help them get out of that, which is really hard because some of these young people who get into these situations are victims as well. And that sometimes is a bit of a conundrum for people because they're committing crime, but actually they're committing crime because they've been exploited into it. So it's about how do you balance that. So we've got a violence and vulnerability unit. We attract quite significant money from government for that. We're also funding it from the Police, Fire and Crime Commission's office. And during the pandemic, as you would expect, we put several bids into government because of our concern around what we didn't know was happening. Crime fell. That was probably obvious that it probably would because people were on lockdown. I think it's steadily growing again back to levels that it was pre-COVID. But we definitely wanted to understand how we better support victims of domestic abuse, for example, because they would be at home with maybe the perpetrator of the crime during lockdown. So we've been very successful in attracting significant pots of money into Essex. And actually deploying that to help our officers actually do the job that they joined up to do, which is really important.
Let's be described as a fall in acquisitive crime over the last year to date. Actually, crime has risen very slightly. We've seen the biggest rise in offences in violence with injury and violence without injury. I'll be probably making the case tonight, and residents who have their own views, and obviously it's really, really important to hear your views, but the biggest issue for Harlow is public space violence around what we see in the town centre and some of our open spaces. We are no worse than any other large towns, but we do still see pockets of habitual weapon carrying, particularly by young people, and obviously related to the distribution of drugs. So we did see a slight small growth in crime last year from the pandemic year. Obviously we run statistics up to April, and we're starting to see that flatten out and come down as we move in during this year. But my priorities, and I know the whole team at Harlow's priorities and the district, is around violence, and especially violence with injuries and violence with weapons in and around our public spaces. And then on the back of that, domestic abuse and some of the issues we've seen around domestic abuse. We saw a lull during the pandemic, and that then continued to grow as we come out of the pandemic. And we're on about the moment around 200 incidents a month for Harlow around domestic abuse on itself, which bigger areas have bigger challenges, but it's sizable for an area the size of Harlow. So I'll be interested to hear your views on violence and your views on other issues as being crime related, but as far as my team's priorities moving forward, and I won't make excuses for it, it is violence with injury and weapon carrying in and around the town. It causes the most harm to people, even to the victims where they're not cooperative because they may be part of the issue or part of a wider picture. It's horrendous for people who want to go about shopping in Harlow, working in Harlow, living in Harlow on a daily basis. And as we move through tonight, hopefully I'll be able to share with you some of the things we're doing around making some of our open spaces feel safer, some of the geographical challenges of the town, obviously being a new town, and hopefully how we might, as we move forward with hopefully some development over the next couple of years, try and design out some of those issues and make generally it feel a safer place.
Thank you, Paul. John, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, Jane, grateful. I think first of all, just to cover off some updates about what the council is doing to support Essex Police and the wider Safe Harlow partnership around town centre crime in particular. As you'll probably know, the council has had a consultation on public space protection orders. We have 2 in place. They run for 3 years, but the current public space protection orders run out on the 5th of August, I believe, Paul, and we're looking to renew those. The consultation does close tonight, however, we are going to leave it open a little longer so people can put in written submissions. Really are keen for the public to share their views on that. One of the aspects of those public space protection orders is to restrict, in particular, alcohol consumption in designated areas, but we're also looking to prevent cycling in certain parts of the town centre as well, which does cause a nuisance for pedestrians. But I see those public space protection orders as an important tool in the armoury for the local officers to get out there and do their job. We've already touched on the Safer Harlow partnership, but I think it's important to underline the priorities of that partnership. Again, tackling gangs and county lines in particular, hate crime, also addressing issues around permitted development, but of course domestic violence, which has been a source of scrutiny by the Council Scrutiny Committee, who are particularly, that's a cross-party group of councillors who've been looking quite closely at that and the impact on Harlow residents. One of the other aspects, which was a commitment by our administration, was to improve CCTV provision in the town's underpasses, given some of the issues of violence against women and girls, and that's borne out of these particular statistics for the town. As a result of that, we've made some good progress. I think there are now 8 underpasses in the town with plans for more CCTV to be put in place. There are around about 30 underpasses in the town, so we're making good progress on that commitment to get that job done. There is a wider discussion, of course, to be had around CCTV provision in the town centre, and we were delighted to have Roger has come down and see the issues around the town centre firsthand with the local policing team in the town centre. I think there's more work to be done there, and Roger recognises that as well. So we look forward to progressing that with him. The council is about to unveil its new community safety strategy. There hasn't been a renewal of that strategy for 10 years, so it's long overdue. What that will plan to do is to cement the partnership working that has been so successful with other blue light services and our community safety team, who get out there and not just deal with those standard incidents of ASB, but environmental crime and so on. That full picture of tackling fly tipping, or if we've got abusive tenants, really is an important part of what local council does. And so we're majoring on that in the community safety strategy, but also looking at the impact on businesses, business crime, and making that a new priority that will be slotted into the community safety strategy that we will be announcing in the summer. So I look forward to sharing that, and also having a consultation exercise with residents about what their priorities should be going forward for dealing with crime and antisocial behaviour in the town. I think I'll leave it there as my updates, but I hope that's a helpful overview of some of the things that the council are doing in partnership, though, with their colleagues tonight.